Oh my goodness, if I had $1 for every time I heard somebody say, I want to be a person of influence or have impact, that's why I started my business, that's why I do what I do, man, I'd be filthy rich for every time I hear that statement. So recently I was with Ryan Lee from CashFlow Tactics, and somebody in his audience had talked about this, and so I went in depth in the next part of this video on how to actually become a person of influence, a person of impact. It's something I'm writing about in my next book, and I want to share it with you right now.
Now let me start with this. Ryan, would it be all right if I just take a second to share? You talk about mindset, skill set, and network, and I've heard you say that a lot, which is funny because that's really where you align, is on those things, right?
Yeah, man. And honestly, you guys, the funny part about this, and the reason I wanted Chaz to come on here, is I think we give you, that is the foundation. That is the key. It's the producer mentality, right? You're only one mindset, one skill set, or one connection away from a radically different life. And I think we give you a pretty decent framework in the mindsets. We're doing the MDA challenge here in a couple of weeks for you guys. We give you a pretty decent skill set around, or a pretty decent set of training and framework around skill sets, specifically in the realm of financial freedom. But then we talk about this elusive thing called the network, right? We say your best investment is your mindset, your skill set, your network. And we dive deep into mindset, we dive deep into skill set, and then we just leave network as a one-word sentence, right? Network. Go invest in your network. I don't know how to do it. That's why we brought Chaz on.
So Ryan, I'm going to share with the group, with your permission, something we're working on in our newest book that isn't published yet. Now, I got the opportunity to write this with my mentor. Now, my mentor co-authored some books called, and some of you may have heard of these books. One of them was called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. One was called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, and several other books. And when my mentor reached out to me and said, hey, I believe that over my life, and he's double my age, right? And I'll talk about him here in a second. But he said, over my life, I believe I've become a person of influence and impact. And I think there's a formula to do that. Because everyone that I know either does something in life, starts a business, whatever, because they want to make an impact on others. Like he said, but I've been able to do that, and I think I know the formula for that. So if you don't mind, it goes right along with the mindset, skill set, network. I'd like to start with that as a framework and then show how the network and how you can do it. And it's funny, you said you're an introvert. I have a networking organization of over 200 and something chapters around the country in 26 states, and I built this as an introvert and for an introvert. So if you identify with being an introvert, you're gonna get done with this and be like, this is only for extroverts. I promise you, it is entirely not. In fact, if you're an extrovert, you probably have a leg up, but for introverts, this works. So is it all right, Ryan, if I start with what's in the new book? And you guys, in fact, I'd love if at the end you give me feedback on this, because it's not published yet. And so if you're like, hey, this is garbage, I appreciate it. I'll pay you all for your time. Thank you for doing it. If you love it, let me know. I'll send you a link and we can send you out the first copies. Fair enough?
That's great, man.
Okay, so Josie, if we could go to the board here. I like to write things out. Like I feel safe with a whiteboard here. So we're gonna do it here. But if you can't read my writing and my scribbles, I'll decipher it for you. But Ryan, one of the things we talked about, you said mindset first. Well, one of the things we did is we created a model for this. And the model that we started with, right, looks like this. Not a pyramid scheme here, I'm not building that, but we're looking at a model here of what we decided was the first one was not just mindset, but there's lots of training and building a mindset, but how does mindset then show up? And we decided that the first one was attitude, right? Like I might have a great mindset, but it doesn't show up, right? Like I'm thinking big, but then how does it actually show up? How do I become that person of action, that person of influence and impact? And it shows up in my attitude. So we felt like attitude was the next step of mindset. And so how does that work? Well, first I have to have an awareness of my attitude. First I have to be aware. Now, by the way, if any of you have a significant other in your life or kids, they'll truly make you aware of how your attitude's showing up pretty quickly. Or if you have people in your life that can do that, this is wonderful, right? In fact, I have several teenagers. Ryan said I have 5 children. My oldest is 19. And I'll talk about my family here in just a second, how this builds in and how I use this. But like with my kids, right? I get home from school, they get home from school, I get home from work, and I start talking to them. I'm pretty quickly, I have a high awareness about their attitude. And sometimes I have to key them into being aware of their own attitude, right? Like that's just life. We all have it. So once you're aware of your attitude and how that's showing up, which again, the foundation of that's your mindset, how your attitude shows up, and once you know that, then sometimes you have to do what? You have to make an adjustment, right? An attitude adjustment. I've caught myself saying the same thing my parents said to me, which is, hey, son, you need an attitude adjustment, right? Like you need an attitude adjustment. Like this, let's get this back on track. But how this shows up is, here's what's fascinating. When I met Ryan, I was really in this phase. Like I had a certain attitude and mindset, and my attitude was showing up about some investments and some things. And I was taking some training from other people, and I was like, my attitude stinks about this. And like, that's how it was showing up. And then all of a sudden I come across Ryan and Brad's training, and like, oh my gosh, like I became aware of the way I was showing up as it attributed to producer in my life, production in my life, my investments, et cetera. And so this really helped me. And as I dial in my attitude, right, I can become my most authentic self with people. And this is why what I really loved about when I met Ryan was like, man, the attitude was awesome. The mindset was great, but the attitude showed up every single day. Like when I stayed at his place, you remember, Ryan, you're like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow at 5 a.m.? Like, let's go work out, right? Like our attitude was like, it's a certain kind of attitude that shows up. And so after the attitude, well, then it is the skill set, right? Then it's the skill. So if I have a great attitude, and then once I got that right, well, now I needed to learn the skills that Ryan and Brad and Jimmy were teaching. And so I dove right in. And so what I have to do with skill first is assessment of skill. Like, where's my skill at? Where am I at with, what's my knowledge and skill set in learning how to produce income? Where's my skill set on investing? Where's my skill set on, so, this is where I think people get stuck, right? This is where people get stuck, is I have a great attitude. I understand. I have the mindset. I take the training. I want to now maybe, as an example, I want to invest in some real estate. But do I have the skill set to go make that happen, right? Do I have the skill set to go identify the right property? Do I have the skill set to identify the numbers? Do I have a skill set to understand the tax advantages, some of the stuff that Brad talks about, right? And I realized like that's where I was deficient. Like I took an assessment of that, self-assessment. Now that I've assessed that and I need to learn the skill, I better take action. It's funny, in our organization, we have a coaching program for business owners. And one of the things that just came up is all of the people in the coaching program said, hey, let's get real, right? What's holding us back? What's holding you back, right? And what happened was many of them said, hey, I have a great mindset and attitude about it. I've assessed where I'm weak on skill, and that's why I'm in this coaching program. But boy, right here, man, I just struggle to take action. I struggle to actually take the next step. Okay, well, let's see how this ties in. Well, one of the ways to do that is when I'm working with skill set, right, is accountability. Accountability is the foundation of all of that. What am I actually doing? Do I show up at CashFlow Tactics? Sorry, Ryan, I'm drawing a blank for your annual event.
Rise Up Live.
Rise Up Live, thank you. I can only think of our event in my head. I was like, what's the name of it? I know what it was, Rise Up Live, thank you. Do I show up every year at Rise Up Live and I'm in the same spot every year? Like, where's the accountability for that, right? Accountable people make our people, we talked about, were people of positive influence. He called it a Popeye, right? And that like dates a lot of us, if you remember the old cartoon Popeye, right? Big, strong, like person of influence here, all right? But underneath all of this that supports it all is what Ryan said. It's my network. That's the foundation of all of it. And so what we do in our book is we talk about this. Ryan, this is what I loved how you framed this. Because if people don't understand why a network's so important, they never actually go take the step to make it happen. And so you said, hey, I was doing all this stuff, right? I had the right attitude and the mindset. I had the right skill set. But what I realized is I was doing it by myself. And I would challenge anyone to find successful people who've done it by themselves. It's almost like everything I read, I'd heard that before, I read that before, and I was like, okay, this is real. If this is the thing, and I'm fairly introverted, I've got to understand that there's an art and a skill to building a network. That this is actually something I've got to have an attitude about, because quite frankly, I didn't have the best attitude about it. Somebody was joking the other day, they're like, I love business except for people. I was like, you shouldn't be in business then, right? You've probably been to like a business like that. You think, why are these people in business? They like hate people, the way they interact. Well, if it weren't for people, I'd be really successful. Well, like that's a change in attitude. Let me help you become aware of that. Let's adjust it, right? Now, what's the skill set with people? I firmly believe that the next successful group of people are the ones that take the high tech and the high touch and bring it together. Right? There's so many technology pieces out there that allow us to connect with people, but only at like that surface level are people they're not taking it deeper. Right? I mean, there are, like you mentioned Meetup, right, Ryan? And that's where it started, and that's great. I jokingly say sometimes that Meetup is like the Craigslist of networking. Sometimes you find good stuff, but sometimes you find some really weird, creepy stuff too. And like, you just got to be careful. Like, where am I building my network at?
So I hope you found that helpful. I mean, everyone that I know talks about how they want to leave a legacy. They want to make an impact and leave something that they've left their stamp on. And we've really found that it's that mindset, that attitude, and that skill set surrounded by a group of people in your network that, number one, help you make an impact, have a successful business. And this is the key. So look, if you found that helpful, you want to like and subscribe to this, I would thoroughly appreciate that. Not only that, by liking and subscribing, you'll stay in touch with us. So when the book comes out, you'll be able to be the first to know and be on top of that. So thank you for listening to this and subscribing to this channel.